Well, hello once again, boys and girls, and we're off on another Alabama adventure this afternoon. This won't be a very long one. There wasn't a whole lot to tell about it. If you remember in some of the videos I did a while back, I was down in Tallapoosa County doing several videos down that way, and had a good friend down there that I called the Black Panther lady. She was who I always went to in Tallapoosa County if I needed to know some history or what was going on down there. She could tell me what I pretty much needed to know, and she helped me out on a lot of videos. And I have another friend just like her up in Clay County. I don't have a nickname for her yet. She does a lot of researching and exploring. She likes to get out and explore old cemeteries and houses and house places and all that type of stuff. She's a very interesting person to be around. I wish I wasn't in as bad a health as I am. Maybe me and her could get together and do some exploring on some of these places. She's told me several stories and a lot of history about Clay County. And recently she bought her a metal detector, and she's doing some metal detecting now and said that she was having a great time. I did a little bit of that years ago, and it is a lot of fun because you never know exactly what you're going to dig up. But now you may now with some of these new metal detectors, it may tell you exactly what you're digging up. But the one I had didn't. You were always surprised at what you found, and usually it was a pull tab or a penny or something like that. But it was a lot of fun getting out there digging around looking. But anyway, I went and talked to her this afternoon real quick on the way to where I was going. I had in mind doing a little video for everybody. The video was shot along Highway 9. It's between the 183 and 184 mile marker is where you'll find. I may say that whenever we go on our little field trip in just a minute. But anyway, what it is many years ago, around 1860 was what was on the grave. I didn't know the exact date, and she said it was pioneer days. And I'm not sure if Ashland, Alabama was even there. Highway 9 connects Ashland and Lineville, the two major cities in Clay County. You'll find those easy enough. But anyway, we did went up there and made this little quick video of this grave back in pioneer days when people were coming through here and deciding to settle on further west, going out toward Texas and California and Wyoming and Colorado to dig gold and all that type of stuff, just moving on. Expanding the country. The wagon trail came through this part of Clay County and headed west, and well, many of them did, but this particular one, anyway, this little girl was on a wagon with her family, and they were moving west, and something happened to her. She died along the way up there in Clay County, and they buried her on the side of the road. Now that's pretty much the story of the grave on the side of the road. Trying to think of what it was. I've been so busy this afternoon, it's hard for me to keep everything straight. But anyway, I want to carry you up there right now and show you the grave, show you the road, Alabama Highway 9. It was a very busy road this afternoon. It is a busy road up there. It's the major road in Clay County, and a lot of people travel up and down it, as you will see in just a few minutes. So now let's get this Alabama adventure going.
And now, from the tail end of the Appalachian mountain chain in the heart of the South, this is Alabama Adventures.
Alrighty, boys and girls, here we are today in Clay County. We're on Highway 9. We got a little something here I want to show you, and then we'll get the video started when we get back home, because Highway 9 is a busy, busy road, as you can hear in the background. And anyway, what I want to show you is this little grave here that's alongside of Alabama Highway 9. It's, as I said, it's just outside of Ashland. It's between the 183 and 184 mile marker. So let's go over there and I'll show you this little grave. It says, "Here lies a baby girl who died while her family was traveling west in 1860. Well, this monument here now has been erected by the Clay County Historical Society in 1990. And you can see just how close the grave is to the road. Of course, when this child was buried here, this was a trail through the wilderness. Wasn't any pavement or cars going up and down the road. It was just a wagon trail that led out of Clay County to probably California or Texas or wherever this particular family was moving to. But as you can see, a lot of people come by and leave little gifts on the grave, like a teddy bear and a little, I can't think of what that little doll's called there, but anyway, precious moments. And then a lot of people have left coins on the grave out there. But anyway, we'll get on back to the studio because it is kind of busy this afternoon, and I just wanted to give you, let me show you this part right out here, this pasture, because I'm going to tell you something about it in just a few minutes when we get back. Anyway, you can see somebody's just cut some hay out there, and or I guess they cut it last fall and it's still laying there. But anyway, you can kind of get an idea of the what the area looks like that we're going to be talking about. Now that I'm through, all the traffic stopped. Okay, so let me add just a little bit to the video. As I said, there wasn't a whole lot to tell. The little girl just passed away, and there were like no cemeteries up there in those days, and there certainly were no undertakers, funeral homes, and that type of stuff in the area back in the 1860s like that on this Pioneer Trail. So the family just had to bury the little girl alongside of the trail, and I'm sure that she didn't have a coffin or a casket or anything like that. I'm sure in those days, as I have heard my grandparents tell sometimes when we were talking about people dying back many years ago, the best they could do was just to take a quilt or a blanket and wrap the body in that, and then that's what they lowered into the grave. And you didn't have as I said, you didn't have a wooden coffin back in those days. And I can only imagine the hurt and pain that this family went through, having to leave their child buried on the side of the road, knowing that they never probably would see this grave again if they moved on further west, because traveling was a whole lot harder to do back in pioneer days with a wagon and a mule pulling it than it is now with high-speed cars going up and down the road. It would be easy to visit the grave now, but in those days, whenever I'm sure they had in mind as their wagon went around the next curve, that would be the last time that they would ever see her grave, and that must have been a sad day for that particular family. Her name and the family's name has been lost over the years. But anyway, something else that I do want to tell you, the reason that I found the pasture there behind the grave on the side of the road, and I want you to keep this in mind the next time you go grocery shopping. That land a while back or so, my friend up there told me this afternoon, I'm going to call her Kathy, so we can, so it make it a little bit easier to know who I'm talking about and what I'm talking about. Kathy told me this afternoon when I stopped and asked her what was a complete story on this grave up there, that I was going to do a video on it, and that's what she said. There's not too much to tell, but she did tell me this. She said several years ago, and I remember when it was in the paper happening and everything, that Piggly Wiggly had actually bought this land behind the grave, this pasture, and they were going to build a big Piggly Wiggly grocery store up there several years ago. Then somebody up in Piggly Wiggly, up in the corporate part or executive part or whatever it's called, found out that this grave was on the side of the road where their entrance to the Piggly Wiggly place would have to be, and they stopped building, and they did not build it. They canceled building the Piggly Wiggly there, not to desecrate the grave, which I thought was very uncommon for a major corporation. Now, one corporation that I know in this area, there was an old cemetery that had also been there. It had 1800s on some of the tombstones, and whenever they decided to build a business in there behind it, they went in and pulled the tombstones up and destroyed them. The reason I refer back and say something about that, there's one place here in this area, I'll just say this area, that I know of where they did build a big company business, and at their pretty close to their entrance was an old cemetery. It dated back to the mid 1800s, and it actually had dates on the tombstones, and tombstones out there that looked like they were professionally made tombstones. Some of them were just rocks that people had to use, like back in those days when they couldn't afford a real marker or whatever you want to call it. But this particular company, so I was told, and I know that the cemetery is gone, and this was what I was told was happened to the cemetery, that they actually hired a crew to go in there and pull those markers up, those tombstones, all the rocks, and they were busted up, destroyed, so they could never be identified, and nobody could really say that the cemetery was there. But I'm sure that that cemetery is somewhere, should be on some historical map here in the county. But anyway, that's just like a lot of things. Now people think old stuff, like old people like me, and anything old needs to be destroyed and done away with. History needs to be destroyed and done away with, and someday they will probably regret that. But anyway, That's just the way it is, and there's nothing you can do about it. But before we leave, I got one other little thing that I want to tell you real quick. Anyway, many years ago, we used to raise horses, and this one little horse we raised, when he was born, he did good for a while, but later on, for some reason, he got sick and died, and of course, we had to bury him. A lot of people don't bury animals like that; they just do away with them, whatever. But anyway, we always buried our dead, our pets, horses, whatever. We always had a grave for it. It didn't matter who or what it was. But anyway, what I want to tell you about is I referred back to a while ago about the little girl probably just being wrapped in a blanket and buried that way. Anyway, whenever this little colt died, me and my dad and my granddad had to bury it. And we had a real good friend that's a real good friend now. He owned some land out of town, and that's where we were going to carry the little horse to bury it, sort of out in the country. And anyway, that's what we did that afternoon after it had died and everything. We carried it out there, and I can remember telling all three of them, I said, can't we go get some wood and build it a coffin or a casket or something to put it in to bury it? And they explained to me that that would take a little bit too long, and it was hot weather anyway, and we didn't want to go to letting the little horse fail or anything like that. So what we were going to do is just bury it like people used to be buried. And I can remember that we carried a couple of quilts up there, and that's what we wrapped this little colt's body in. And I remember very well my granddaddy up there saying, after we got the hole dug and the horse wrapped up and it put into the grave, I can remember him very well. This horse got a better funeral than a lot of people that I know many years ago. So I guess that was just the way that people had to be buried when they just didn't have any money back in those days. Here's a picture of that little colt that died. He was doing good for a while, but something just happened and he passed away. His name was Hippy. Anyway, Hippy's resting somewhere, and I know I'll see him again someday. Anyway, as I always like to say, the Alabama Bigfoot Society is run completely out of pocket, and if you're in a position where you can and where you would like to make a donation, that would be very much appreciated. If you like what we're doing down here with these videos, or if you like this video, give us a like. If you like what we're doing down here with our investigations and our stories and that type of stuff, we do hope you subscribe to the channel. And I guess with all that being said, good Lord willing, and the creeks don't rise, I'll see you somewhere on down the trail. And someday he and I will ride across the endless skies looking for Bigfoot.